faces. Worst generation, cooking up a feast while he's turning through the pages. Theories that he's making, from shonen to seinen. Blocked in, analyzing, using observation. Yeah, observation. Rambling addiction.
Hello there, it's me, StrawHatLucas. Welcome back to yet another episode of Rambling Addiction. First things first, I have to give a major shout out to my boys, Dastard and Grand Line Bound. Both of their channels will be linked in the description below. These two are the ones who made the amazing introduction for this week's episode that will be in every episode of Rambling Addiction going forward. And also, that theme song's a bop, I ain't gonna lie. Play it again. I'm joking, I'm not gonna play the whole thing again. But yes, you guys get it. So, what is the topic of tonight?
What's this?
If you look at the title of the video, it says the manga that I think deserves more love. But what manga could we be talking about? It's Kanjiki no Gash. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Zatch Bell. Now, according to my phone, Kanjiki no Gash is a manga series written and illustrated by Makoto Reikyu. It was serialized in Shogun... Yeah, so Kanjiki no Gash is a manga that ran from 2001 to 2007, has about 36 chapters, and it is one of the best stories I have ever read. And I'm not saying that in like the kind of sense that like, oh my god, it's so good, like you've got to read. Like, just for me personally, it is one of my favorite stories of all time. If you're not familiar, Kanjiki no Gash, or I'm so sorry, Zatch Bell. If you're not familiar, Kanjiki no Gash is a series about these little demon children called Momotos that are battling to become king of the demons. Yes, this sounds very familiar. Why do I like mangas about people trying to become the king of things? One Piece, Zatch Bell. Yes, as I've already suggested, the plot of Zatch Bell is pretty simple. 100 demon children come to our world to fight each other and must pair up with a human. See, the human is the key part to these battles. In a Momoto battle, the demon's power comes from the will of the person that has their book. Yes, they're spell books that the human partner has to hold and then will the powers into existence.
Magic missile!
Our level 1 main character, Zatch Bell, is paired with Kyo. Now, Kyo is kind of an arrogant asshole, if I'm being honest. He is very, I'm smart and I'm better than you. Look at me. It almost reminds me of Light Yagami if Death Note was like G or PG. Actually, I can't even say that because Gash Bell has some violence in it. Because these demon children, they don't just battle each other and defeat each other. Some of them actually do unalive the other demon children. So Kyo and Zatch meet up. Zatch has lost his memories of anything that happened in the demon world, and it is up to Kyo to not only help Zatch regain his memories, but to make him king of the demons. Now, I don't think you guys are watching this because you want to hear me recap what happens in Zatch Bell. You want to hear why I think it is so good and why I love it so much. And I think it comes down to Riku's character writing, if I'm being honest.
Fictional characters.
Now, as you guys know, I'm a huge One Piece fan, so to say someone's character writing may be even better than One Piece, to me, is blasphemy. But if I'm being honest, Reikyu is a strong contender. And that brings me to the first pair of Momoto human partners I want to talk tonight, and that is Iron Man Falgore, Invincible Falgore. I guarantee that sounded terrible on my mic, but I do not care. That is right. The first pairing I want to talk about for the Momoto battles is Falgore and Kanchome. Now, these two characters, I'm going to put a picture of them on the screen right now. Yeah, look at them. Look at them. Look how irresistibly manly Falgore is. And look how duck-like Kanchome is. Yes, now these characters are originally introduced as kind of like gag characters. You're like, hey, yeah, you know, he can shift form into other people, or he can make himself really small or really big, but it's only an illusion. His enemies can't be hurt by that. Kanchome becomes the 7th contender in the entire contest.
What did he say?
Out of 100 demon children, Kanchome is number 7. He is in the top 10.
Liar!
Now that isn't something that goes along into the whole kind of theme of this video where I'm talking about the characters and how much their relationships are well written. That just goes to show Kanchome and Falgore know what they do with, baby. I think that the relationship between Falgore and Kanchome is one of the best written in all of Shonen Manga. Anyway, The older brother, younger brother dynamic between Kinchome and Falgore is just beautiful. It is one of the best written relationships in the entire story because they both get the same thing out of it, and that is building each other up. And I don't want to get super duper sappy and cheesy, but that's really the only way I can talk about Kinchome and Falgore's relationship. Without Kinchome, Falgore is not invincible. He's not the Iron Man. He needs Kinchome there to pump him up. And the same goes for Kinchome with Falgore. Kinchome needs Falgore there to show him to be brave, to show him to be strong, to be a better person, to not fall into the whims of his own hubris. And why do I say that? Well, because the deepest connection between Falgore and Kinchome is what lies inside of them, and that's anger. When we finally get the backstory on Falgore, he is actually a wanted man originally. Like, when he was a teenager, he'd been kicked out of his home, he was a hoodlum, he had done all these terrible things, and it wasn't until he learned how precious life was and how he wasn't the center of the universe that he was able to become the Iron Man Falgore. Kyanchome is the reverse of that. He thinks he is small and insignificant, that he doesn't have much power, and if he did have power, what would he do with it? Well, we find that out later in the story when Kinchome unlocks all of the spells in his book and can really kind of mess some people up, if I'm being honest. Because Kinchome's ultimate power is to create illusions. And I'm not just talking your everyday, like, oh my god, he's big illusions like we see from him early in the series. I'm talking about, like, they think that they are dying, so they are dying. And it goes as far as to, like, people will think that their wounds are mortal, so they will think themselves into the grave. And it's crazy to me that that happens. But anyway, I digress. Since Kinchome gets that power, he immediately becomes flooded with the sense of, I can finally take the charge. I can finally stand up and help my friends. And if they don't want my help, I'm going to make sure they have to have my help. And he kind of starts going down this darker path. And Falgore reminds him, no, that's not what we do. We're not here to wreak havoc and wreck the opponents. We're here to make Zatch the king, or make ourselves the king. And in that moment, Kinchome grows up a little bit. He realizes the error of his ways and letting power corrupt him. And it is one of the most beautiful moments in the entire story. And it is followed by one of the saddest moments in the entire story, as Falgore realizes Kinchome's book is burning and his friend will soon leave the world and is out of the running for the Demon King. And when I tell you, I cry when I read this every single time. I cry. It is one of the saddest deaths I've ever read in a manga series. And what's crazy is he's not even, like, passing, actually. I need to stop saying the D word because YouTube doesn't like it. But anyway, Kinchome isn't actually passing. He's just going back to the demon world. Like, there's a chance we will see him again. But it doesn't matter, because seeing Falgore hold who has become his best friend after these 2 or 3 years of training together and growing together and learning together how to fight, it is so beautiful and so heartbreaking to see them say goodbye. And that goes to add to my point that I've been trying to make with this video, is that the character writing is just so good that these jokes, right? Because, like, let's be real, that is what they're introduced as. Jokes become so integral, not only to the plot, but to making Zatch king of his world, that it breaks your heart the minute that you have to realize, if Zatch wins, Kinchome cannot. And it adds this gravitas to the whole situation and the whole battles between all of the Mamoto. Because as we see through the series, there are some Mamotos who are bad, and some Mamotos are good, and some have this weird gray area to them. Which brings me to my next character I want to talk about, Barry. I'm gonna show Barry up here on the screen real quick. That is Barry. He's got big old horns. He is a tough guy, and him and one other are the only 2 Mamotos in the entire series who we see get actually close to burning Gash's book. But in that battle, as he was about to defeat Gash, he realized something. The resolve of Gash's eyes. Gash knew in that moment when he first fought Barry exactly what kind of king he would be. A kind king, one that puts an end to these silly battles to figure out who the next king is. One who wants to unite the demon world as he sees Kyo and his friends unite in this world. And because of that resolve, and because Zatch had already figured out, this is exactly what kind of king I'm going to be, this is exactly the stand I'm going to take, Barry respected his resolve. Shout out again to Dastard. If you know, you know. And by respecting that resolve, it shaped Barry even more. When we see him for the second time in the manga after his and Zatch's battle, he has changed completely. Not only is he beaten up more physically, but we also see that his mental state has changed. He's decided he will become a strong king. And if he can't be king, then it has to be Gash. And it's one of my favorite moments of the entire series, seeing Barry show up again and realizing like, hey, I might not make it out of this, but if Gash does, then I know I'll have a strong king and I can serve him beside him and being a strong advisor to make sure he knows when to be strong. Should I say strong again?
Of course. Strong is strong.
And he also has just one of the, I wouldn't even say it's a sad, like going back to the demon world. Once again, I'm trying to avoid that D word, but I don't even know if it's a sad one because he's so proud of his nature and how far he's become, because this battle he has realized wasn't just a test to see if he could be king, but to see if he could have the respect for the king that would be. And as I said earlier, he realizes, I get to serve Zatch. Yes, I don't get to be the man that gets to be king, but I get to serve the king and be friends with him. And it's just such a, like, it's that moment of friendship that you get from a lot of shonens that just hits so hard, you know what I mean? Like, that's me and my boy. And the last two characters I want to talk about in this video are actually Ted and Cherish. So back in the demon world, Ted, our little Momoto boy, and Cherish, our little Momoto girl, have met up and are kind of like the older orphans that take care of all the other orphan demon children. That's like the best way I can describe it, if I'm being honest. So they form this like mother-father relationship to all of the other orphans, and it's just such a unique, because like, I don't know, man. It's such a unique way to set it up, because like I said, most of the demons in this battle are children. You do have a couple that are like older or bigger, but for the most part, they are all children. But then you get to Ted and Cherish, who, yes, they are children, but they have taken on so much responsibility in the demon world that all Ted cares about when he's fighting isn't becoming king, isn't anything other than getting Cherish, because he knows that she is there too, and that she's fighting to become king so that she can free all of those orphans that he and her had taken care of. And you get to one of the best written moments in any shonen manga I've ever read, and that is the battle between Ted and Cherish. You see, throughout the later half of the manga, after Zatch and Ted have met up and they become friends, and he learns how to fight a little bit better because of Ted, this threat that I'm not going to go too into, I know I'm already talking about spoilers, but like, I don't want to spoil the whole thing for you guys, but this threat that is bringing a gigantic demon into the world, right? Well, Ted finds out Cherish might be there, so he goes to help Zatch, and then he sees Cherish under the control of another Momoto and about to make one of the biggest mistakes they could ever make. And he fights Cherish and beats her without ever laying a single hit on her. He allows her and another Momoto to beat the ever-living crap out of him just to show her that, like, hey, it's okay. It's okay. Like, you're going to be okay, and this is going to be okay. And when I tell you I weep every time I read the chapter where they both vanish back to the demon world, I weep. And I've almost been talking to you guys for 10 minutes now without even mentioning some of the best relationships in this entire series.
But wait! There's more!
Whether it be Tio and Megumi and forming this strong bond of sisterhood and being there for each other, or Kid and the Riddle Professor, just learning from each other and becoming better with each other, with Kid even ultimately sacrificing himself so that the Riddle Professor could live. But I think the best showcase of Riko's character writing is Gash and Kyo. As I had said at the beginning of this episode, Kyo starts out as this arrogant, good-for-nothing dude. Like, actually, I can't say good for nothing because he's a genius, but he starts out as arrogant and not caring. He has, like, friends that he treats terribly, but then by meeting Gash, he learns to open up and to accept people more and to realize that, yeah, he may have all of these smarts and knowledge about the outside world and how things work, but that does not compare to having friends. Which I know, once again, it's kind of a cheesy message, but it doesn't matter because it hits, and if it hits, it hits. And the same can be said for the opposite of Gash. Gash is super good at making friends, but he's not the brightest. So they fit together so well, and it is such a strong dynamic to watch. And Gash knows that as long as Kyo is standing behind him, he can face forward and become king of the demons. And in closing, I urge anyone out there who remembers fondly watching the anime on Cartoon Network when we were children, or has never really experienced the series, please go read the manga or watch the anime. The anime is pretty good. After around 250, they go into some filler stuff because the manga had not ended and they needed to wrap up the anime. But if I'm being honest, the manga in itself is perfect, and it is the best way to enjoy this series unless we get an anime remake. Because yes, while the anime is entertaining, the animation is not the best at times, and as I said, they kind of fudged the ending because there was no ending to go off of for the manga. Very similar to Full Metal Alchemist from 2003, because let's be real, Brotherhood is the better iteration. I'll talk about Full Metal Alchemist soon. Maybe next time. Probably not. But yes, go read Zatch Bell if you have not. And while you're at it, go look at those childhood anime or mangas that you remember reading vaguely in the past, but haven't been through since. I read Zatch Bell about once every 2 or 3 years because it reminds me of a simpler time in my life. It's not only there for nostalgia though, because the series is so good that it's just a good read. And if I'm being honest, this last read through that I did only about 2 months ago was the best read through I've ever had with the series. I don't know if it's because I've had some more loss in my life since the last time I had read it, or because I've gotten older or a little bit wiser or something, I'm not sure. But for some reason, the series spoke to me to such a level that I felt the urge to make a video about it. And not even on the story aspects, which the story is amazing as well. The only detriment I can say about the series in the manga format is that Reiku, you could tell, kind of rushed through some of the drawings at times. But that said, even though that is the case, his stylistic drawings are amazing. And you'll see these stylistic characters drawn on these amazing backgrounds in these amazing environments. And you're like, why doesn't he draw the characters better? Because he doesn't have to. That's not the point of it. The point of it is you're caring for these characters. It doesn't matter how they look, you care for them. But yes, I've been StrawHatLucas. This was a pretty good rambling session, I won't lie. Once again, shout out to my boy Dastard for rapping some of the hardest bars I've ever heard in an introduction song, and for my boy Smokey. Grand Line Bound, baby. That's where we're going. Once again, links for their channels are down in the description. Next week, we'll probably be going back to One Piece to talk about my full thoughts on Dr. Vegapunk. Ooh, yeah, it's going to be spicy. I'm not going to lie, especially with everything that's going on in Egghead, but just in case any of my viewers aren't reading One Piece, I won't go too deep into it right now. But yeah, we will see you guys in the next one.